favorite design styles to do is Formalinear. And when we're thinking about any design style, there are certain characteristics that you have to follow for it to be that particular design style. With Formalinear, what we see is that it's very dramatic. So we see strong line movements, we see a lot of negative space, there's bold forms. It's really good to showcase like your form flowers, if you wanted to, or foam foliages that we're going to show today. But it's dramatic, and there's certain things that you have to follow. So I wanted to just kind of emphasize with you some of these things. I want to start with my framing of it first of all. And framing is where you're basically outlining the focal point of the design. So I have a beautiful wooden box that we're going to start. And I wanted to start with sago and talk a little bit about line movements. Now, if we wanted to have a slower line movement, you see a sago, it has a lot of detail and texture. If I wanted my line movement to be slower, I would leave all of this the same so that my eye would catch this and it would just kind of slow down and slow down and slow down and go all the way down to the focal point. But I want to speed that up. So I'm just going to take my sago and I'm going to just shorten it up just a bit so it's not quite so large. And I'm just going to trim it. Now I'm going to take my pair of scissors and I'm just going to cut and cut and cut. I'm not counting. You can count if you want to. If you, for example, are doing this for a competition, you want to count all of these to make sure that they're exactly right, or whether you're a certification or whatever you want to do. I'm just going to cut this in, but I don't care. I just want to make them so they look exactly the same, similar anyway, and then trim them up so you can see where we're going with this. So it just gives me, it takes away that bushiness and it kind of streamlines the whole thing, and that's what I want with this. So we're going to speed this up a little bit and just trim this up all the way down to the very end so that we have our line movement. So I'm going to start with one that I've already pre-cut. Give yourself a nice point. Sago has a pretty broad stem to it. So I'm going to start partway in and create this line movement. I'm going to shadow this with that second one that we just did. Shadowing is where you place a second item in front or behind that's pretty much the same object to create this kind of shadow influence. Then I'm going to carry this across. My rule of thumb, if you put it on one side, put it on the other, so I have a shorter one that's going to go this way. Same effect, a shadowing effect. And tucking those in. So I've got it on the sides and I've got it to the top. Now let's repeat that, and I have it with some myri fern or some foxtail fern. So we're going to do that same movement. Let me place this in again so I can get that line movement that I want. There we go. And do a secondary with that too. So I have that same shadowing. So I have strength here and strength here. Now if I wanted to make this line really, really fast, because here I'm stopping it. If I wanted to move it fast, I would do this to the myri. So that's just basically taking it and just making that a fast line movement, which is really kind of fun. So we're going to do that out the other side and make it just a little bit faster so my eye doesn't stop there. And I don't want it to stop. I want it just to move in. This is where I want to focus in. This is where my focal area is going to be, because this framing brings it up and pulls this down. And that's what we want to do. So I did a fast one on that side. Now I'm going to take fan palm and just trim this up. Just because it's too big, number one, but I also want to just give it some interest. So taking fan palm, I'm going to place it to the front and to the rear. So what this does then is gives me my volume to the center so you can see where we're going. So I'm kind of eliminating my foam so that I have an area to cover, and it has to cover that all up. And then I come to my basing techniques when I want to start creating this. So I'm going to add a little bit more foliage. So I've got some salal. And it's all about different textures. Right now we're pretty monochromatic with our color palette. And that means the textures have to stand out. If we're going to do that, the textures have to be dominant in this. So a little bit of salal tip, tucking that in. from one side to the other. So we're bringing it in, we're kind of tucking that in. I have some anthurium foliage that I'm going to take from one side. Come on, darling, get in. There we go. And we're just going to add, I want a little bit more volume here, so I'm going to add a second one there. And you are going to go on this side. So now we're going to come to our basing. So we pretty much have our line movements created all the way around. Now I want to create this. So our drama with negative space with line movement is huge. So let's add, I have some green trick here. And I love green trick. Who doesn't? It's a dianthus, it's a carnation. The texture on it though is incredible. Some broken ones here that I wanted to use short. And if you're doing this for the shop, you can have, the foliage lasts a long time, so you could have this done a week ahead of time and just grab it to take it to the store or take it out on delivery. You could have a lot of fun with that, so you can add some flowers. All right, so we're going to take some carnations too. And I just want to start building my base. So basing is anything that you use to cover your foam. So we're using our basing techniques. I'm doing kind of a pillowing with my carnations down into that very center, so that I get a little softness. And we're still kind of have radiating stems, so it's coming out. That's another characteristic of Formalinear. But I also want to pull my eye from side to side. So I'm going to put one to one side. So a little bit of orange there. So you can see, let's do a little bit down here so I don't have any foam showing. Making sure we cover everything up. And of course, the shorter the stems, the longer the arrangement's going to last. The flowers are going to last, and that's what I love about this. And then to the opposite side. It doesn't have to be exactly the same amount. I just put one and one, and then our beautiful center. Now let's talk a little bit about sight lines. So sight lines here, we've got our sight line here, and then we have, boom, we have our focal area here. So if we add a sight line to this, I'm going to use a little bit of lily grass. And you can do this a couple different ways. I have some floral tape that, if you just twist floral tape, whatever color you want to use, or you could use decorative wire if you want to, and just twist that. This is really hard tying mechanism, so I just wanted to use that to tie this in. And I'm just going to twist that one in. I'm going to save it and not twist it all the way, because I want to add another one. So what this does, by adding this, it's now going to slow down my eye movement from the top to the base. It's going to give me another sight line, and that's what I love about this, is that I'm able then to stop my eye in multiple places before it gets to my focal area, and that's what makes it exciting. Let's do one more. And it brings it down, it kind of encloses that in. I love the look that it creates. You're really long. It's time to take you down a little bit. There we go. And it slows that down. I'm going to readjust you. And sometimes it just takes that just readjustment just to make it look perfect. Sometimes just moving something once just gives it all of that. So now we have another sight line that stops. We can continue this sight line and keep going if we wanted to. I'm just going to take and split this one and slide this through. Maybe. If I can find, there we are. There you are. And slide it through, and then I'm going to give myself another sight line. So it slows my eye down even more. And just by slitting the lily grass, I'm able to get it to hold. So that it just pulls it through. And it gives us that motion and that movement that we want through this. Let's do one last one right through that very center. And I'm repeating the same. And I honestly want to make sure that you do that each and every time. If you're going to do the slit in the lily grass, make sure you do it at least twice. so that you've done that on purpose. It's intentional. If you only do it once, it's kind of like an accident. Here, this is intentional. I've done my binding with 3 of the lily grass, so it's all there. So what we see now is that we have the different sight lines. We come to the top, we slow down, and boom, we hit that orange. So that color impact is really, really strong. From our shadowing to our framing that we created to the basing techniques with the groupings, here we have a really good example of Formalinear Design style.